I need you to knock some sense into me. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I don't know.
I enjoy listening to you. I don't always agree with everything.
All right, enough of this persiflage.
So, you want my question?
I'm certainly not going to get myself in trouble by telling you what to do.
That makes great sense. Gosh, that's good.
Did I overwhelm you with words and wisdom?
I've got 7 kids. I feel like I could call you every day.
Wait, you're telling me I'm wrong? Disconnect.
Yes, I am, Dr. Ray.
You just need to tune in to Dr. Ray, honey. He's got all the answers.
Am I right or am I right?
Probably.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
I deliberately didn't give her any choice. I didn't say, am I right or am I wrong? I said, am I right or am I right? She said, probably. She had no options. It was the only option she had. Okay, delighted, absolutely delighted to have you here with me on this ePerson Monday. It's a variant of The Doctor Is In. Through the radio program and the TV program, Living Right with Dr. Ray, we get a lot of email. I know I call them persons because I'm really nervous about using the word male all the time. Seems rather gender insensitive, linguistically narrow. But we get a lot of them, a lot of missives. Well, probably should say missives because missives is kind of assuming it's a miss. It's not, it's a ms. About just different aspects of people's lives. And so I try to get through to them. But there for a while, I was just finding no way to get to answer all of them. There's too many. And I wanted to give more focus, more attention to them. So that's what this ePerson Monday is for. Do I want to just simply do... Yeah, I'm going to use this ePerson in a focal point as an opening monologue. Mom says, I called at the very end of the show today, and she lists the date. I just wanted to follow up regarding my 8-year-old second grade son. When these outbursts of behavior would happen before, we would punish him. Stay in his room, could not attend his flag football games for multiple days if need be. It does not seem to put a dent in these outbursts. Well, I'm going to comment on that in a second. We try to talk him out of his, quote, bad mood, and when he doesn't budge, we bring out the threats of punishment, which don't seem to faze him. All right, let me stop there. It is not at all unusual for someone to come into my office and say, this is what this child does, this is what we do, and nothing is getting any better. It's not unusual at all. Now, the first thing someone could think, and I probably would have thought this as a very inexperienced therapist, wow, what is it about this kid that he just seems impervious to parent structure? What's going on here? Something different about this kid's personality? Is he 3 standard deviations out on the strong-willed continuum? In essence, what I would say is we got to explore the particulars of this child. And I think in a narrow, unfortunate way, that's often what happens in therapy. It's not unusual for a parent to say to me, oh yeah, we've had him in therapy and nothing's ever changed. Because by and large, when a child acts like this in response to what looks to be consistent, fair, strong discipline and doesn't improve, then you think, well, what is wrong with the child? That's the natural thought. Something's wrong with the child. Now, I got to admit that I had leanings that way early on in my life as a shrink because I went through graduate school, and graduate school was inclined to teach that way. We had to get a diagnosis for the child. The implication being the child is out of the norm. As I explored with parents these situations that look to be perplexing. Why isn't he responding? What's going on here? I found that often, very often, and again, I must preface what I'm about to say. I'm not looking to blame the parents. I'm not looking to say they are bad people. What I found was they underestimated what they needed to do. They weren't as consistent as they thought they were. And they bounced around. In other words, we'll try this, we'll try that, we'll do this, we'll do that. We'll reason, we'll not reason. We'll punish for 6 days, and then we won't punish at all for the next 6 days. There were just an awful lot of variables that needed to be addressed and tightened up. Very, very commonly that's so. I have uncommonly, I was going to say rarely, maybe I should say seldom. I have seldom had parents come in and describe a kid who has been a long-term behavior problem for him. Now, this 8-year-old here, I can read between the lines that it sounds like he's kind of been this way earlier on. And I will comment on some of this. But he's been this way, and he's befuddled them. They're not sure how to deal with this. I mean, we're trying stuff. We're taking away this. We're taking away that. We're reasoning with him. We're not reasoning with him. Nothing seems to change. Now, see, that's the other thing I got to ask. I got to ask, well, what do you mean by nothing seems to change? See, oftentimes what I will say to them is, what do you think would have happened had you not done this? So for the last year, you simply said, well, meltdown, go ahead, meltdown, and there'll be no punishment, and whatever you do destructive or whatever, we'll just try to ignore it. What would happen? And most of the time they'll say, oh, he'd get a lot worse. I say, right. So when you're saying something is not changing, you're at least keeping a lid on it. All right. That said, that's another variable to explore. When I talk with the parent and I ask what they've done, when they've done it, what they're like when they do it, how does he respond, there's usually a lot of places we can go to work on. I'll share with you, for example, one like this. Okay, so he melts down when he doesn't get his way. Now, he probably doesn't melt down all the time, just certain times. All right. So if the parent says, go to your room, please, and lay on your bed, I'll come up later. Would he? Now, when you have these chronic meltdowns, most parents would say, no, he wouldn't. No, he would fight us. He'd melt down. He would scream. He'd argue. He'd go to the room and he'd come out immediately. I said, so really you have weakened authority. You can't get him to accept discipline. And when that becomes apparent that is the case, then they realize, oh my, so he sees us a certain way, doesn't he? Yes, he does. He sees you as someone who can be challenged. Because you will discipline. In fact, I'm not saying you don't discipline. I believe you do. But there's something about what's happening here that is giving him the message that I can push on this, and we need to explore what it is. Now, she goes on. My husband and I are looking for ways to try to talk him off the edge of a meltdown before things get way out of hand. Would that be just giving him the consequences and sticking to it and blacking him out, which means taking away all privileges until he accepts his consequences? Now, I have to tell you, in the majority of cases that I deal with in my office, when a parent says he won't accept discipline, and I say, what do you think is a fair consequence for this particular piece of behavior? They'll tell me. I say, okay, do it. Well, he won't accept it. We already know that. I go, wait. We're going to go blackout then, which means all privileges cease. All privileges cease. I mean, we're talking the kinds of foods that he like. You can give him a sandwich and a banana. He doesn't get fried chicken. We're talking favorite sweatshirt is gone. So given that, have you done this? Now, most parents have only done it a couple of times. It isn't part of their structure. It isn't, this is how we operate. If we give you a fair consequence for what you did, which is really kind of a nasty piece of behavior, and we're going to hold you accountable for it, and you don't accept it, well, then blackout kicks in. It's automatic. Rarely do parents do that. Rarely. They'll do it when they think a particular piece of behavior has been resisted egregiously, ugly, violently. Then maybe they'll do it. But by and large, it isn't. This is what we do if you refuse. And we're not going to be nasty about it. It's just reality. I will tell you, after 45 years of doing this, yes, I started in middle school. After doing this, I've seen very few kids, especially the younger ones. Older ones can hang on for a bit longer. But the younger ones who, after a few weeks of this, will go, so what? Give me your blackout. Go on. Make it go on for 3 weeks. I don't care. That's not going to happen. They're not dumb. And this isn't jackbooted, kick the door down authority. This is, I don't want to fight. I don't want to have these meltdowns. These are obviously very ugly and unpredictable, right? So therefore, now mom adds this qualification. This is interesting. And again, this is a factor. He is the only child out of 9. Now they have 9 kids. His, dad's meaning, mine, mom's, and our 5. That is so laser focused on this sporadic, keyword, sporadic angry behavior. But in the last month or so, it's become more common. He says he hates school and wants to be expelled. And that is the reason for the behavior at school. What's going on at school? Is he being bullied? Is he taking gym class? He doesn't want to take gym class? Some girl making fun of him? What's going on? You got to check out the school environment. Much of the time, it just happens if I don't want to go. I don't like sitting in class. I don't like having to do work multiple hours a day. I don't dig it. I don't like it. Now, apparently, he's doing some of this at school. Mom says the school counselor, who seems to be really going out on a limb with helping us with this. Okay, good. Get everyday reports on what his behavior is like and function accordingly at home. What will the consequences be for the reports you got? If he knows that the school is going to give you a report, however brief, doesn't have to be anything big, every day regarding this, he'll know that you and the school are acting as one. We're really struggling to find a solution. Our goal is to find a way to stop this while he's still a child so he can function in society as an adult. Well, this is the standard fear, which is, he's 8, I'm starting to panic. If we don't get this under control, he's going to be 24 on the streets, ne'er-do-well, in trouble with the law. A little early to push that panic button, because more often than not, the good news and the bad news is this. The bad news is he's acting like this. The good news is we can change it because there's a lot of things we can do to adjust to it. Dr. A, be back.
We don't have a lot of time on this earth. We weren't meant to spend it this way.
The doctor is in.
What can I say? I'm thrilled.
Our world is filled with noise, work, screens, and endless demands. But Christ calls us to step away and listen. The nonprofit Revive app offers one-on-one virtual conversations with certified spiritual companions who help you deepen your relationship with God, discern His will, and find peace. If even the saints needed spiritual guidance, how much more do we? Your first 2 sessions are free. Download the Revive app today. That's REVIV, and then the number 3.
Hi, I'm Matthew Handley from PurpleCatholic.com, inviting you to my new program, Death Comes for the Archbishop. Each week, we'll explore Willa Cather's timeless novel of faith and frontier life in 19th century New Mexico. You'll hear vivid narration and thoughtful conversations with historians and theologians who bring its spiritual depth to life. Death Comes for the Archbishop, Saturdays at noon on Ave Maria Radio.
This week on Christ is the Answer, Father John will preach on the birth of our Lord and our call to bring Christ into our lives. It's almost Christmas time, and as we busy ourselves with preparations and generally getting wrapped up in the season, Father John wants us to remember to ask ourselves, what would Jesus want for Christmas? Let's take time to reflect on the Incarnation and why God became man for us, whom He loves. Tune in for Christ is the Answer, Monday through Fridays at 11 a.m. on Ave Maria Radio.
All women are invited to the new weekend retreat, A Virtuous Woman Growing in Virtue Through God's Grace. The retreat is at St. Francis Retreat Center in DeWitt and includes set-aside time for Mass, confession, adoration, and individual reflection. 4 weekend dates are available between November 2025 and April 2026. The suggested donation is $215. Visit stfrancis.ws to register today.
Thank you so much for joining me here. Dr. Ray Guarendi. Appreciate the company on this E-Person Monday. Let me see what we got here. I'm scrolling through my phone. This is a generic one. This came from Jane. It's not a particular situation. It's a common question. What is a nervous breakdown? And how is it treated? Nervous breakdown is a relatively old term. It's an umbrella term. It's not very specific, and it doesn't mean much. It doesn't really point to anything particular. It means, as most people use it, that the person has either gotten overwhelmed by life and more or less shut down, or sometimes it was used to describe a mental disorder break. So let me take the two. Nerves don't break down unless certain neurodegenerative disorders, but by and large, on a functioning person, the nerves all pretty much work. So a nervous breakdown is, when used to substitute for a psychotic break, it means there has been something going on in this person's brain, neurochemically, that has caused a break with reality, a significant break with reality. Much of the time, it's not understood. People are not clinicians. They can't look at this and say, oh my, here's a psychotic break, and we must get proper medical attention to get proper drugs to see if we can rectify the situation, at least somewhat. So we call it a nervous breakdown. And we look for something in the person's life that may have precipitated this. In fact, sometimes we can't find anything. A psychotic break is oftentimes random. So in that sense, nervous breakdown is used to, as a layperson, describe a significant mental disorder that erupted in an individual. It is also used to describe just about anything that would dramatically affect a person's ability to function, whether it might be depression, despair, some kind of sense of being overwhelmed by the stressors of life, by circumstances an event, maybe bereavement, where the person just simply became semi-paralyzed by their own grief. Anything that would seriously interfere with a person's living life reasonably well, or at least like they did. Nervous breakdown is, in many respects, a meaningless term because it doesn't point to anything particular. It is used to describe a whole range of individual responses to circumstances or to their own breaking down, if you will, of their neurochemicals in the brain. How's it treated? That depends on what nervous breakdown points to. Points to a psychotic break, a serious mental disorder, then medication is the first-line treatment. And sometimes it can work nearly miraculously. If it points to a reaction to stressors in life that are so serious that the person pretty much shuts down, then therapy is probably the best move in terms of what is going on in this person's mind that is so seriously affecting their emotions to the point where they don't function well anymore. They've just decided not to do much in the day-to-day movement of life. They've shut down. They've retreated. They're scaring the people around them because I've never seen mom or dad like this. And then you have to deal with it in its specifics. Old term, umbrella term, very broad. Doesn't mean a whole lot. Isn't something where you say, oh, well, he's been diagnosed with a nervous breakdown. Now I know what to do. No. I guess that would be similar to, how would I say this? An individual who, he hurt himself. Well, okay. Well, what does that mean? Well, he had something happen to his body. Okay. So what's that mean? Well, something's not working right. It's kind of out of whack. It's not like it's supposed to be. Okay. The parallel is there. Nervous breakdown is just this broad term. Doesn't really point to much. All right. Let's see what else we got. Am I looking at the clock here? Oh, I got about a minute and a half. I'm not going to be able to do much more. Here's another one. I love these kind of psychology type things. Is there such a thing as a photographic memory? See, we have this image that a person can see something, read something, and just flat out remember it word for word, and it takes them no repeat, no rehearsal. I just see it, I know it. In rare cases, there are people who can do this. They just have the ability to recall pretty much specifically what they read. But for the most part, people vary greatly on what they can remember, especially in what they've read, what they've seen. I can read a paragraph, stop, turn, look at you, and recite the paragraph verbatim. That's a rare skill. That is a rare skill. And it gets the term photographic memory because that's kind of a commonplace piece of language that people have used. It stuck, it caught on, it seemed to reflect what's going on, kind of like a photograph. I can take a picture of it with my eyes, translate it to my brain, and then recite it. But in fact, to do that is a rare thing, And I must confess ignorance because I don't know enough about how common it is, and I don't know enough about how accurately the term reflects what's going on. Catholic Radio's Psychological Babylon. Nice to have you with me. Dr. Ray Guarendi here. Dispensing Dachazin, very potent drug. You get it interaurally through your ears. It has gone off patent some years ago, no longer called Dachazin. It is tricyclinol. It's a very helpful drug for, especially for Bratus majoris, wimpy parent syndrome. This E-Person Monday. My husband started believing in flat Earth during COVID lockdowns after turning to social media. You know, one of the things that, and this is just a tangential comment, but I said in the very beginning of all these shutdowns, I said there are going to be so many unintended ill effects of doing this, of just separating people from people, of just shutting down all the outlets that are normal life. I'm not going to debate at this point the seriousness of COVID. I'm simply going to say that kind of response, that kind of absolute dramatic, never before response would have all kinds of unintended ill effects. And here's one. Here's one you don't hear about much, but a lot of people turn to social media, as did this gentleman. My husband started believing in flat Earth during COVID lockdowns after turning to social media. And this has led to other believed in conspiracies. Deceased well-known persons, for example, faking their deaths, but still alive, in hiding. And living persons, executed, she puts that in quotes, being replaced by actors. It has led to his doubting the truth about many things, including history, Fatima, St. Ignatius Loyola, and he has an obsessive tendency to dominate most conversations or end with some reference to them. It has affected his faith and our marriage. I'm deeply saddened because I love my husband so much. I refused, for example, to believe the flat earth theory, and this has led to some resentment on both sides. He believes he has increased knowledge and can't ever go back due to what he knows now. I've turned to fasting and prayer, but it seems to keep getting worse. I appreciate your advice, any that you may have. Ironically, coming here today, I was listening to a very well-known talk radio host. And he said that he spent some time, which he normally does not do, just scrolling through various aspects of the news on the internet. And I use the word news in quotes. He said he simply couldn't believe it. There were so many wild-eyed conspiracies. Not things that may have some factual things that need explored, but no, just craziness. He cited the fact that Erica Kirk was responsible for her husband's death as she cooperated with a certain nation to have him killed. He said he realized that people do this. A certain amount of them are just going to become so confused and so unsure of what to believe about anything that they're going to believe anything. Now, it sounds like that could be a dynamic that's happening here. Now, why it is, I don't know. I can't know. I would have to talk at great length to this individual and to see how he's come to these conclusions. I don't know if there are other psychological, neurological dynamics going on. Is something happening to his ability to think through things? What is it that he won't budge on believing this? G.K. Chesterton had a great line. He said, when people stop believing in God, it's not that they believe in nothing. It's that they'll believe in anything. She says it keeps getting worse. That's interesting. Is it because he continues to spend time on this? I guess I would say here, ma'am, is rather than dispute his theories, because you said here he believes he has increased knowledge. It's kind of like the old Gnostics back when our Christian faith just began. One of the big challenges to the faith, and you will see this alluded to in particularly the letters of St. John. The Gnostics, they believed they had hidden knowledge and that it was revealed only to them about these things. And nobody else had it because they were special. Seems to be a little bit of a parallel here as she speaks about this. I would really want to know, how did this gain momentum? Is it related to any other changes in his personality? Other than the ones she points out, which is it's difficult to have a conversation with him. He becomes preaching about these things with others. I want to know if there's other unrelated aspect changes to his personality that would make it seem unusual. A third thing about this is I probably would not dispute what he believes to be true. I would take it from the angle of, what is this doing to our marriage? What is it doing to friendships? If you believe these things, and you're angry at me for not believing them, what does that mean? What are you saying? Are you saying I'm not loyal to you? Are you saying that if I don't think this way, we have less and less in common? What exactly does all this mean? It's on one hand, it's a difference between us when you believe these things and I'm reluctant to believe them, but it's quite another when you say that you're not sure we can have a close marriage unless I embrace these things. That's kind of how I'd focus on it. I'd focus on the process rather than trying to argue him out of these things. If I say, well, what do you do since you're spending a lot of time in social media? What do you do with those folks who have evidence that this isn't true? What do you do with that? They're part of the conspiracy. Is this making you any happier, any better functioning? And can you do anything about it? What would happen if you just simply stopped diving into this? Would it help you? Would it help our marriage? Dr. Ray Guarendi here. The program is Doctors in Variant E-Person Monday. This is a rather tragic and complex situation, and obviously it would take an awful lot of exploring the dynamics and the unfolding of the process. So I'm just, at best, only able to offer a few thoughts about the situation. I'm quite worried about my daughter, who has now changed her name. I'll change it to Stephanie for anonymous sake. She stopped talking to me a few years ago. Now, I don't know how old Stephanie is right now, but this is interesting. She asked to go into a foster home at age 16. Now, I don't know if she asked that and obviously didn't, and then moved in with the friend, which mom says, doesn't say exactly the year, but then moved in with the friend at 16 or 18, I don't know, and now has really gone in a negative, self-destructive direction. She was a very happy child. We prayed the rosary every day, Holy Mass every Sunday, plus weekday masses. Okay, this is not uncommon. I said, so many parents talk to me about their kids who have severed the relationship, have left the faith, who as children, as even young teens, seemed very, very embracing of the faith. But as the cultural shaping took over, because once they started to move more out of the safety cocoon of home, the forces of the culture misshaping their souls gained momentum and seductiveness. So it's not unusual at all. And usually parents are perplexed by this. They say, wait, how could this kid who used to pray Mass and show me how he would set up Mass when he was 9 years old, how could this kid be an atheist at age 19? What happened? That is not unusual at all, because the child is reflecting, at least at the time, the way he's being raised. And then as he becomes more and more exposed to a very seductive, godless culture, much of his childlike innocence and embracing of the faith was stripped away. All right. Let's see here. After being bullied in school and being taught in a Christian school that it was wrong, very wrong, to pray to Mary, I brought her for counseling. So let's see what she's referring to here. I don't know where this is from. Okay, she's using a abbreviation, and I'm not sure what it stands for. They put her on Zoloft, and then something stronger. And then she seemed to start blaming me for everything and changed radically. I don't know what happened during counseling. I have no idea. I have no idea why they decided that this adolescent needed antidepressant medication. Again, I can't comment on that. It's not unusual for a teen to go into therapy, especially an unhappy teen, and especially one who's unhappy with parents' conditions and rules and structure and guidance, to start trashing the parent pretty heavily. And unfortunately, many counselors get misled. They think, wow, this poor kid has put up with an awful lot with this parent. And very subtly, they feed into it. I've seen it happen many, many, many times. I've seen it happen. She gave me permission to call her by her given name. All right. She can go back to calling me what I was called before. I was called Stephanie. But has blocked me from any communication, but said that she would communicate with me if I would do counseling. I wouldn't rule that out. I would tell your daughter, okay, all right, I'm willing to go to counseling with you. Now, I would try to find someone who would respect your religious worldview. If you go to someone who is a secular counselor who doesn't know anything about religion or anything about why the way you believe what you believe, then, yeah, you don't know exactly what kind of guidance you're going to get. But if you go with someone who at least respects the fact that you look at life the way you do and don't see it as neurosis or a pathology, you might have a better chance of making some kind of connection with your daughter. At the very least, you're going to find out what it is that she thinks is so terrible about you. Ultimately, I'm praying for a family Lourdes pilgrimage. Well, wouldn't rule out the power of prayer for that. I would think right now, given your daughter, and I don't know her age, my guess would be, sounds like she's 19, 20, 21. This hasn't been going on all that long. that she would be real resistant. And if you say anything, watch her reaction carefully, okay? She does makeup as self-expression art. But I'm worried about this latest situation and don't know how to get her help. Well, here's the problem, Mom, and this is the reality that if you accept it, you're going to be at least somewhat at peace, which is you can't get her help if she doesn't want it. If she doesn't see there's anything wrong with the way she's doing anything, and that the way she was raised by you is the source of why she's so discontent now, then you're going to have to accept that the only option she seems to have given you is conjoint counseling. Other than that, you're in a position where you have to say, well, I'm going to pray for her safety, I'm going to pray for her well-being, but I can't do anything about the decisions she makes. This is so hard for parents, so very, very hard for parents. And their main question often is, well, how do I get this young adult to think differently, to act differently? That's a much harder question than how do I bring some peace back into my own life given my helplessness? I've said this so many times before in this show. This is a phenomenon that I believe is very unique to our time and place. That so many kids are abandoning the faith and turning on their parents as a result of it. Very, very common in that subset of religious people. And the kids are closed to any kind of connection or communication or help because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. Their view is the parent was the problem. And so the parents torture themselves. Where did I fail? How do I reach them? And it's very difficult for the parent to say, this is out of my hands. I'm here to pray. I'm here to reconcile if and whenever. But for the meantime, I want peace in my life. I want the peace that the Lord said I'll give. And that's where the effort's got to take place. Dr. Ray.
Wishing you a blessed Advent and a Merry Christmas from St. Paul Street Evangelization. The new year brings new vision and new plans to drive our mission forward, to train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples for the urgent work of evangelization. Will you give a year-end gift to lead more souls to Christ in 2026? All donations up to a total of $20,000 will be matched through December 31st. Visit streetevangelization.com/donate to give today. That's streetevangelization.com/donate.
Who is the Creator's masterpiece? The Catholic Catechism says that God's masterwork of the mission of the Son and the Spirit is the all-holy, ever-Virgin Mary. She, for the first time, was the dwelling where the Father could place His Son and His Spirit to live among men. The Church, says the Catechism, has often read the most beautiful texts on wisdom as relating to Mary. She is acclaimed in liturgy as the seat of wisdom. The Holy Spirit prepared Mary for her great task by filling her with grace, and by sheer grace she was conceived without sin. It was appropriate that she, in whom the eternal Son would dwell, would herself be without any stain of original sin. This is Peggy Stanton, and this has been the Order of Malta's Minute with the Catechism. Please visit us at our website, www.maltausa.org.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Boy, the one I wanted to do here has a number of variables to it. Now, I'm looking at the clock with about a 5-minute time frame left, and I'd like to give it more time than that. So let me just switch it off and save it for later and go over to, okay, what do we got here? This is a kind of a generic quick one. Since humans are living longer, and this is true, by the way, heard an interesting presentation by a fellow who certainly is very, very well informed on things like health span and lifespan. He made the observation that really in about 5 or 6 generations, for the most part, across the board, we have doubled our lifespan. For much of human history, it was not all that unusual that 40 years of age was a pretty long life. Well, now it's 80. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Of course, sanitation, medicine changes, a lot of things. We've been able to cure a lot of stuff. Most people died of infectious diseases for most of human history. We tend to forget that. When we get ill, we, for the most part, think, oh, there's got something that'll fix this. Does this mean, again, since many of us are living 80 and well beyond, we'll get some form of dementia? No, it does not. Dementia, significant dementia, is still a minority of people in their 80s. Now, that said, it is true that probably the number one factor in beginning into dementia is age. I saw a statistic just recently that by age 85, approximately 50% of people have some form of beginning neurological deterioration. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily enough to impact their life so that they can't live independently, but it could be the beginning. The longer you live, the more likely things are going to happen. Cancer, breakdown of organs, kidney problems, those kinds of things happen just with age, and it would make sense also that various neurological deteriorations would take place. And there's 50-some right now identifiable neurodegenerative diseases. Alzheimer's is the most common one, counts for over 50%. But there's many others. It's still, though, fortunately, still people in their 80s, and there are things we can do to lower the risk in terms of diet, in terms of exercise, staying active and keeping the blood flow to the brain, all these things. Real important. Intellectual stimulation, yes, there's big factors here. So given that, the answer is no, not most people in their 80s are going to experience significant dementia. Although it gets more common as one gets older. That is probably a safe statement. There's something called mild cognitive impairment. About 1/3 of folks with mild cognitive impairment go on to the beginnings of dementia. Mild cognitive impairment just basically is a little bit of slippage in the way you can process things, a little bit of slippage in memory, a little bit of slippage in neurological functioning. Not as sharp, not quite as sharp, but you're not to the point where you can't be independent. You can't generally navigate life. So the good news on that is even living longer, probably the majority of us are not going to die of some deterioration in the later stages of dementia. But we may have a little may have a little cognitive slippage. Shoot, I experience some of that now. I cannot recall names or people or words like I used to 10 years ago. I can easily go, who was that again? What was that person again? And these oftentimes are people that I've known pretty well. Now, I'm not talking about people in the social circle of my life, or maybe an actor or a celebrity or some person that socially I haven't seen for quite a while. But at one time, they were a pretty established part of my life. And now it's like, what was their name? Who was that again? Oh, yeah, Andrew Kruchek. That's right. The guy's my producer. Yeah, that's right. I knew who that was. Thank you so much for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. I appreciate the company so very much. Good Lord permitting. Let's see what we got tomorrow. Live call-in from you. Walk with God all the way into eternity.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.